was approved during the exchange between the Deputy ANC Chief Whip Doris Mambani and NA Speaker Togo Didiza.
I move that the House extends the deadline by which the ad hoc committee to investigate allegations made by Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi has to complete its task to the 20th of February 2026. I so move.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Whip. Are there any objections? No objections agreed to. The Secretary will read the first order.
And Tunisia released a prominent lawyer and a former, or rather human rights advocate, Sonia Damani, a local critic of President Kais Saied, after she spent a year and a half in prison over comments in which she criticized Said's policies. Damani is widely seen as one of the leading voices defending freedom in Tunisia, and her arrest brought a wave of solidarity from lawyers and civil society activists who said the case carried a political dimension. Reports suggested that Damani was freed under a conditional release order issued by the Justice Minister Laela Jafal. And police in Malawi are investigating the theft of 4 police dogs from a presidential palace during political transitions in September. Godfrey Arthur Jalela, who served as a State House Deputy Chief of Staff under former President Lazarus Chakwera, has been arrested in connection with the theft of the 4 German Shepherds, which he denies. The police have denied rumours of Chakwera's arrest, but have obtained a search warrant of his residence, suspecting the dogs are being held there. Chakwera's party claims Mutarika's administration is harassing him. On to this now. Britain's Office for National Statistics say the net migration to the UK dropped sharply by nearly 80%. The numbers show a 204,000 decrease in the year to June, a drop from 649,000 in the year to June last year. The office has attributed the fall to fewer non-EU nationals coming to work and study in the UK. The BBC's Daniel Sanford has the details.
Figures that the Migration Observatory like to use, showing work visas down 70% and study visas down 67%. So those measures, which were largely brought in actually by the Conservative government, really restricting the numbers of people who can, for example, arrive with dependents for study, and narrowing down the numbers of people who can come here to work.
A recap of your top story. Guinea-Bissau's military has installed General Hota Ntanaman as the transitional president, a day after soldiers toppled President Umaro Sissoco Embalo in a swift power grab that followed a disputed election. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Matapela Mahabe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, the Commonwealth Sport has confirmed that Ahmedabad in India will host the 2030 Games, while the ICC seals Pakistan's rights deal through 2027. I'll tell you details of these and other stories at 4:30.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 6 minutes after 4 p.m. A very good afternoon to you, Africa. This is Africa in Business. The G20 is done and dusted as far as us, as Africa, hosting it. This afternoon, we recap on the year that was with SFM and Ashraf Garda as we bring you the G20 summit wrap. And also we'll take a look at developments happening in Kenya, where the Masai Mara Wildlife Service, which is the Kenya Wildlife Service, they're very concerned about the tourism that the Marriott Hotel has been instituting in Kenya, and they're wanting some of the buildings that they've constructed to be demolished. We'll find out the reasons why and how it is impacting their wildlife in a negative way. This is the Masai Mara National Reserve. That and a whole lot more coming up for you on Africa in Business today. And perhaps if you are in Kenya and listening to us from there, let us know if this has actually impacted you in a personal way. Is this something that you're seeing? Has there been an impact on the recent developments by the Marriott to the tourism, to the wildlife in the country? You'll find us on the various social media platforms on X, Instagram and YouTube. We are at Channel Africa 1, and on Facebook we are at Channel Africa.
Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za.
South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile has reaffirmed the country's strong diplomatic ties with Finland, praising the Nordic nations' continued support on key global challenges. Speaking during a bilateral meeting with Finnish Prime Minister Antti Petteri Orpo at the OR Tambo buildings in Pretoria, Mashatile said South Africa deeply values Finland's partnership in strengthening multilateralism and supporting the global fight against climate change. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe reports.
South Africa and Finland share a long-standing and steadily evolving diplomatic relationship built on mutual respect, shared democratic values, and a commitment to addressing global challenges through cooperation. Since the dawn of South Africa's democracy in 1994, Finland has been a consistent partner in supporting the country's reconstruction and development efforts, offering assistance through development programs, capacity building initiatives, and growing trade investment ties. The bilateral meeting in Pretoria on Wednesday underscores the commitment of both nations to deepen diplomatic, economic, security, and developmental cooperation. Deputy President Paul Mashatile emphasizes.
Your Excellency, allow me to reiterate South Africa's deep appreciation for Finland's steadfast support during our G20 presidency. This commitment was underscored by the participation of His Excellency President Alexander Stubb at very short notice, for which we remain sincerely grateful. Relations between South Africa and Finland continue to be warm, cordial, and constructive. Since the dawn of our democracy, Finland has recognized the importance of South Africa's reconstruction and development efforts and has made a meaningful contribution through various development partnership agreements, as well as expanding trade and investment across diverse sectors.
Mashatile added that ties between the two nations have grown even stronger, highlighting the 2023 state visit by former Finnish President Sauli Niinisto, which produced concrete cooperation on water management, education, and training young peace mediators, proof, he said, of a partnership delivering real and practical results.
Our bilateral engagement has been further strengthened in recent years. A notable highlight was the state visit by former President of Finland, His Excellency Mr. Sauli Niinisto, April 2023. The visit yielded several concrete and positive outcomes, including cooperation on water resource management, educational models for early childhood development, programs focusing on out-of-school youth and adult education, and a joint initiative to train young peace mediators. These practical projects reflect the substance and value of our partnership.
Mashatile said the visit deepens trade and investment ties, with Finnish business leaders exploring opportunities in smart mining, water systems, and smart cities. He added that water management and digitalization remain central to cooperation, noting two nations' shared history as a foundation for building a better, more inclusive world.
Your visit today builds on this high-level engagement and serves to further consolidate our bilateral relations, particularly in the areas of trade and investments. We are encouraged that your delegation includes business leaders seeking to explore new opportunities in smart and sustainable mining, water and built environments, and the development of smart cities. Permit me to highlight that water management and digitization remain central pillars of our bilateral cooperation. The history of our respective struggles and the lesson drawn from our shared solidarity remind us that by working together, we can build a better world, one in which the aspiration of all nations and people may be realized.
Responding to Mashatile's address, Finnish Prime Minister Antti Petteri Orpo said both countries must stand together in defending multilateralism, democracy and equality, adding that their shared values create strong business potential and joint solutions to global challenges like climate change. He welcomed the opportunity to deepen cooperation.
We have to defend together multilateralism, just like you mentioned. I agree with you. We had to take care of our important values like rule of law, democracy and equality of people. And because we share the same values, we have huge potential in business. We can solve the problems we face, like climate change, together. So I'm very pleased that we are here today and we continue our good cooperation. Thank you so much.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News in Johannesburg.
Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 16 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. That time has come once again. We've been doing this for a few months now. The simulcast between Africa in Business on Channel Africa and the National Pulse on SAFM. And I tell you what, it's been such a pleasure building up to the G20. And so here we are. South Africa having officially handed over the G20 presidency to the United States. Now, you'll remember that upon assuming the presidency on the 1st of December in 2024, South Africa set up a number of working groups tasked with identifying the country's priorities that will form part of the G20 Leaders Summit declaration. And Ashraf, it really has been quite a journey to where we are right now.
It absolutely has been. So, I mean, let's just go back. From the onset, remember there were questions about the American participation in the working groups and just how involved or not involved are they. Well, we do know, finally, at the end goal, it ended in now what we know as a complete boycott of the G20 Leaders Summit. And certainly from a Trump perspective, don't come to us next year, right? So in one of the series of interviews building up to the Leaders Summit, we then chatted to Dr. Duncan Pieterse, the Director General at South Africa's National Treasury. And listen to this. He assured us that the United States is taking part in the G20 working groups.
And our understanding from them is that they intend to continue to do so. And therefore, it is quite difficult then to be in a situation where you are not attending deputies' meetings or discussions during our presidency and then to take over the presidency next year. So certainly from a finance track perspective, there has been engagement. We've been working on a communique last week and this week here in Zimbabwe. And what's important about that is that it's a consensus document. And so all the members in the room have to agree to the language that is used there. And our US colleagues have been part of those discussions and negotiations.
And this was very clear, Ashraf, right from the beginning, and the United States' hesitancy in being part of it. There's several touch points that the United States was not congruent with, quote unquote, the rest of the world with. For example, the issues of climate change, them not even really acknowledging that climate change is a serious problem. So right from the beginning, it was very clear that this is not something that they were going to be participating in. Also, because they didn't even agree with what the theme of the G20 was. Are you with us, Ashraf?
Yes, I certainly can. I think you're quite right in as I reflect on that. How much of that, by the way, is the USA, and how much of that is Donald Trump specifically driving the American agenda in this case here, right? Now, we do know this. South Africa's President Ramaphosa, in his capacity as the host of the G20 Leaders Summit, announced that the summit declaration was adopted by consensus at the very start of the meeting. Let's just recap on that.
I also want to begin by thanking
the adoption of the declaration from the summit sends an important signal to the world that multilateralism can and does deliver. It sends a message of hope and solidarity across the world. It tells the world that as the leaders of the G20, we will keep fast to our solemn pledge to leave no person, no community. As this is the first G20 Leaders Summit to be held in Africa, it carries the hopes and must reflect the aspirations of the people of this continent and of the world.
There we hear President Cyril Ramaphosa saying it has to reflect the aspirations not just of the African continent but of the world as well. We may not have had the President of the United States support, and I think you make such a good point there, Ashraf, that distinction between the United States itself and President Donald Trump as an individual. What would post-Trump relations between the two countries look like? And despite the US boycott of the Leaders Summit and some of the preparatory meetings leading up to it, South Africa's G20 presidency did receive support from a vast majority of the G20 member states. And amongst them was the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who indicated that Canada and South Africa are tied by an enduring friendship and a very promising future.
I also want to begin by thanking President Ramaphosa for his leadership in hosting the first G20's Leaders Summit in Africa. as well as his generous hospitality and that of his team. Now, when President Ramaphosa attended the G7 in Kananaskis back in June, we discussed our shared priorities for Canada's G7 presidency and South Africa's G20. And even though Canada and South Africa are separated by long physical distances, we're bound by deep historical ties, by enduring friendship, and a promising future together.
Certainly it is. Let's now get back to the present tense, right? We know now that, late last night, many people thought that was like a hoax story, a fake news story, but the American president announced that South Africa will not be invited to the 2026 G20 summit in the United States. A decision Pretoria has called the move punitive and regrettable. But some political commentators say the decision points to a significant reflection, in this case here, of diplomatic tension.
I now say that this gavel of this G20 summit formally closes this summit and now moves on to the next president of the G20, which is the United States, where we shall see each other again next year.
And we'll see what next year looks like, Ashraf, because, is it even within the president's jurisdiction to decide who comes and and doesn't come, especially when they are officially members of the G20. So I guess a lot has to be seen between now and then.
Well, yes, it has. And I think a lot has been said about just that, South Africa were not just guests, they're very much a part of the G20. So, even as a host nation, is it your call to tell someone you're not invited? So, for example, could President Ramaphosa decide that he would, in his own view, choose not to get the Americans to come because I don't want you to come? He didn't have that prerogative, and some may put the same thing to the Americans. But there's no question it's a reflection of ongoing tensions. It's not in isolation. I think the big question, and I've asked it at the intro today, to say, what should South Africa do now? What can South Africa do now? And this question is beyond G20, just that. It's about the relationships between the two countries. Now, as you may reflect on that, the one side of it is, and I've heard a few commentators say that this may well increase the ongoing American drive to isolationism, which sometimes when you overplay your hand and you think you're too clever and you're too arrogant, you can say what you want. And history has numerous examples of that. You overplay your hand, you get into big trouble in this case here. So it could be that. On the other hand, it may seem to some of the critics listening right now to say, you see, South Africa's on the back foot, you guys are a bunch of idiots, look at what you guys have done. But the reality is it could well prove or become the catalyst for South Africa as a nation to galvanize ourselves in a different way, to mobilize, to say, so if the Americans are literally, in colloquial terms, dissing us, as they are, right, we have to respond in a way that reflects our own strength. And perhaps that strength may come through now, because we did that during apartheid South Africa, when we had this common enemy at that time. We came together as a nation. Perhaps we need rallying calls. G20 was one of them. The 2010 World Cup was another. These rallying calls, this national purpose, could well be the catalyst. Unintended so, maybe, from the Donald Trump perspective, Thami.
And a very valid point you bring there, Ashraf. And I mean, we saw during the G20 summit, the world leaders and even the European leaders siding and supporting South Africa in this. France also being very vocal. And the president making it very clear that the overwhelming support that the declaration received, with the United States saying that there shouldn't be a declaration at all. And the European Union, as well as the African Union, also then meeting, post the G20 Leaders Summit. The timing for the United States may not be the best, and you may be onto something. They may just be overplaying their hand. And we'll see how the global politics and the relationships continue with Trump, as well as his trade policies and the tariffs, AGOA, and South Africa not being, invited therein, possibly out of AGOA. So let's watch and see as the social, political, and political economic relations between the United States and the rest of the world continue to unfold.
Well, I mean, just the last thing on that, I mean, we do know that there are many South Africans who've rallied and lobbied the American president to and give feedback about the state of South Africa, and we know a lot of it is just absolutely false. So, I mean, that's the one thing. But for the majority of South Africans, I really think we are being punished, and we may feel the brunt of it in economic terms, and that's not easy to handle, if there are economic pressures, because it affects every one of us, right? But I'd hope to think that for all of us who are on side regarding the South African project, that we really do get together and say, hey, you know what? We are not going to allow a foreign leader of a foreign nation who may only last a couple of years more. There was a whole series of elections at regional level yesterday, and the Republicans fared very, very poorly in that, right? We're not going to bow down to that situation, but we need to fight back, and we need to fight back in a way that's very constructive. Something that actually, to be fair, South Africa's myriad of political parties and interests have not done well over the last 5 years. So this could well be, and it should be, this mobilizer.
And it should be a wake-up call not only for South Africa but for the rest of the African continent, for us to start nursing and nurturing our other trade relationships, both within the continent and outside. But I really do believe South Africa does deserve a big round of applause. Africa deserves a big round of applause, because for all intents and purposes, this was a successful G20 Leader Summit. And I must say, Ashraf, it's been absolutely amazing doing the simulcast with you every single week and walking South Africans and indeed the rest of Africa through the ins and outs of the G20 and just how intricately linked the trade is to the politics, because one cannot separate those two, as we are seeing.
Well, I mean, look, that point you're spot on. So, one can't be naive. So, for example, even if one is critical of other countries, and believe me, even amongst the G20 countries that came to South Africa, one can question so many of them around, human rights issues. And the same way, many can question South Africa about its own service delivery or the absence of service delivery to our very own people. So very few countries stand up as absolute champions of service delivery to their own citizens, right? But having said that, right, you are right. I think we need to take a lot of credit for having delivered. Would you rather be in a position that we delivered and we say, thank goodness, and maybe we're exaggerating it, as some may say, or would we rather be gloating about the fact that, we messed up, we're just a bunch of idiots? And I think, really speaking, and I may have mentioned this before in your absence the other day, Thami, having been to Paris last week, I can tell you now, I mean, wonderful city. I've been there before, but wonderful city. But if you think people are not sleeping in the streets overnight, you have got to be joking. There are hundreds of people living in the streets in Paris, very close to all those big tourism-y spots that you talk about, or we all talk about. They them. What I'm trying to say, I'm not saying, hey, look bad on them. The reality is all countries in the world have problems, but it's like applying for a job. The best way to get a job is to talk down on yourself or to talk up on yourself. So we as a country need work. Do we talk down South Africa or do we talk up South Africa? That's my final word, Thami.
Oh, and what a final word it is. Let's, stand up there with that nationalism, with that patriotism, as we try and build a South Africa and an Africa that we all will be proud of, because it is ultimately our home. Many of us don't have any other place to go to except this one. Ashraf Garda, it's been an absolute pleasure, and you and SFM have yourself a really great rest of the day.
Okay, and to the Channel Africa audience, for now, maybe for the last time in a long time, goodbye. But it's time now for the news headlines. It's 4:30.
And as they go to their news...
in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa and SAFM, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
And as SAFM goes through their news headlines, we go to our markets desk, where Buntle Hedbush is standing by with your latest market indicators.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Thami. Good afternoon. And our final look at the indicators this afternoon. $1 US is trading at 17 Rand 14 in South Africa. In Botswana, it's trading at 13 Bula 25. Namibia, 17 Namibian dollars 14. The Zambian kwacha is trading at 22 kwacha 77. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 78. In Ethiopia, 153 birr 60. Uganda, 3,000 599 shilling, and in Tanzania it's at 2,465 shilling. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,453 naira. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 47 Egyptian pound 70. In Tunisia, it's at 2 dinar 93 this afternoon. Algeria, 129 dinar 68. In Morocco, the dollar will cost you 9 dirham 20. In Angola, it's trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is trading at 2,189 to the US dollar. Now looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,154 per ounce and platinum at $1,604 per ounce. Both have inched higher this afternoon, while Brent crude oil is trading at $63.03 a barrel. And that's your indicators. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please do send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +2711 714 4459. For the Channel Africa Business Desk, I am Bontle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And for the latest from the business of sport, a very good afternoon to you, Musebudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you so much, Thami. Very good afternoon from the sports stage. So Jessica Mutaung, the marketing director as well as a board member of one of South Africa's biggest football clubs as Kaizer Chiefs, continues to shed more light on just how image right agreements are structured at the club. Mutaung says Chiefs have adopted a tailored approach that also ensures the club and its players benefit fairly from the business attached to the partnership. Meanwhile, players have an obligation to disclose endorsement deals when approached or are keen to collaborate on. Mutaung explains on that.
So they are required to share some of those contracts with us to look at, see there is no conflict. And it's an education process. We have a session coming up now because we've got a lot of young players also coming out of development who are now excited and wanting to do things. Yeah. And then you find people going to them early and they're excited. And it's about sitting down and saying, these are our players, and it's a part of the department that I'm now starting to staff up a lot more because there's a need for people to monitor. There's a lot of ambush happening. One of our players got a coffee maker, and he's now starting to. It's like, for a coffee maker, you're getting. Not even around image rights, but you're giving someone who gave you a coffee maker you can buy.
She's also adamant that Chiefs do not want their players to be caught on the wrong side of the law.
Image rights are taxed. You know, there's a whole tax process around it. Yes, government is very much aware that it's a key component of the sporting space. And there have been engagements with SARS and those kind of entities to make sure. Yeah. So the commercialization of sport and the players has become very, very big. And we have to be very deliberate about how we deal with it and very much on point.
On to this now. The International Cricket Council, also known as the ICC governing body, have sold media rights in Pakistan covering all its major events through 2027 to state broadcaster PTV and a streaming platform Myco. Now, PTV and Myco have between them secured Pakistani broadcast as well as digital rights to the next 2 years of the ICC events. The PTV will air the action, on linear TV alongside Myco as well as Geo Super, while Myco will now also hold digital rights and will also now work alongside platforms such as Tamasha, Tamad, as well as ARY Zap. In total, the 2-year cycle features 8 major ICC events, 5 men's as well as 3 women's World Cups, including the T20 World Cup early next year, the Women's T20 World Cup also to be held in 2026, as well as the Men's Cricket ODI World Cup the following year in 2027. A tender for these rights alongside similar packages in Bangladesh as well as Sri Lanka was launched in late August of this year. Well, the Commonwealth Games Sport have confirmed that Ahmedabad in India will stage the 2030 Games, formally ratifying the city that will step in to replace the original host, Alberta in Canada, for the centenary edition of the event. Now, the decision was ratified by 74 Commonwealth Sport member nations at the 2025 Commonwealth Games Sport General Assembly, which took place yesterday in Glasgow, Scotland, ahead of the 2026 Games, which will be staged in that city of Glasgow. Now, this will also mark the second time the multi-sport event takes place in India after Delhi back in 2010, which was marred by construction delays as well as allegations of corruption as well as mismanagement. According to the organisers, most of the venues are already ready. The funding has been secured. The budgets have also been meticulously worked out and are very confident the country will deliver a Games which will be remembered for years to come. And finally, Formula One design legend Adrian Newey is set to become Aston Martin's team principal next year. The move is part of a major restructure of Aston Martin that sees Andy Cowell removed from his current position as team principal and chief executive officer just 13 months after joining the team. Newey started work at Aston Martin in March after his exit from Red Bull last year. His current role is managing technical partner, and he joined on a 5-year deal in which he could earn up to $30 million a year, including bonuses as well as add-ons. Cowell, meanwhile, is set to become the chief strategy officer with particular focus on the team's engine partnerships with Honda and the fuel supplies. That concludes your sports news this afternoon on Channel Africa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, remember to send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za and call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Be inspired. Stay informed. Channel Africa, the beauty of life. Now available anytime, anywhere with our new app.
It is exactly 39 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time as we take a look at business within South Africa's townships. And this time we're focusing on the Soshanguve Mall. It was built in one of South Africa's biggest metros. It opened its doors on the 21st of November this very year. It's seen as a milestone for Gauteng province's retail and investment landscape. Investment company Cubisol says the mall's construction has generated over 2,000 jobs, prioritizing local suppliers as well as contractors, with 30 to 40% of the workforce receiving training or upskilling. Andre van Below, who's the managing director of Cubisol, says investment in the mall reflects their investors' belief in the long-term growth potential of township retail and its ability to deliver sustainable returns while driving economic inclusion. He joins us on the line. Andre, a very good afternoon to you and congratulations on this brand new mall.
Recording in progress.
Oh, that doesn't sound like Andre. Andre, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear. I was saying congratulations on this mall. How did it all begin, the vision to build the Soshanguve Mall?
Well, I mean, it really was, last Friday was an amazing day just to see the amount of energy. We bought the mall in 2012 from the McCormicks, and I've always been a fan of township malls. I think there's an incredible amount of potential in township malls. And immediately on us buying the mall, we were aware that that mall was underservicing the entire area. So we began planning. We obviously needed to settle the asset down for 3 or 4 years and understand the area much better. But it was very obvious that we needed to build a much bigger mall in that area. That area has got nearly 1 million people, and in that entire area, going from that Soshanguve Mall north towards Hammanskraal, there were literally 3 other shopping centers of 30,000 square meters, which was crazy. There should be a lot more penetration into that area.
So, brief us a bit on the opening of the mall. It is set to shift the economic trajectory of really what is one of Gauteng's largest metros. You've just told us about, the number of people that are actually being serviced in that area.
Well, I think where we get really excited is we've got a couple of township malls that we own and have developed. And I really love the impact that these malls have on the surrounding communities. They create massive jobs during construction, and then obviously they create permanent jobs when people leave, when the construction is completed. And that's very exciting. It puts money back into those communities. It also saves those communities a lot of traveling time in terms of their spend to bigger malls. We've really brought something world class to Thami Ngubeni, and it will allow people to stop traveling to the mainlands and the Mall of Africas because they'll be able to get that product on their backyard.
Clearly, you struck something as Cubisol that you deem to be quite profitable and necessary, and that there is a gap for you in the township economy as far as constructing malls is concerned. Talk to us more about that. Your investment strategy and your broader mandate, and why you are viewing township developments as both commercially strong and socially impactful.
Yeah, the story begins back in 2004 when I first joined the listed sector, and I was exposed to township retail, and it was immediately apparent to me that there were more opportunities in township retail than there were in metro retail. Metro retail in South Africa is vastly penetrated as well, whereas there wasn't that penetration into township retail. And the other thing is we were very bad at determining the spending capacity within those township areas. We were consistently underestimating the spending capacity in those areas. Now, fast forward 20 years, and a lot of those issues still remain. It's still tremendous opportunity there because of the potential and the untapped potential.
There are a number of malls, though, Andre, that are closing. What strategy do you have in place to make sure that the doors that you open remain open?
Yeah, there have been some very high-profile cases. I think typically those guys are getting their catchment areas incorrect, or they're building too big, as in the case of Fourways Mall. They completely overestimated the size. We are extremely careful about understanding our catchment area, what is needed in that catchment area, and building very high class shopping centers that cater to the needs. So we've got 10 shopping centers within Cubisol. Really, they've gone from strength to strength over the last few years. So we don't see that in our portfolio, but I am aware that there are some bad stories out there.
Andre, one of the areas of concern that has come up quite often is township entrepreneurs, people who traditionally owned the general dealers, who traditionally owned the corner shop, that they've now been quote unquote pushed out by the likes of yourselves, the big malls that come into the townships. You've got the financial muscle, you've got the infrastructure to compete with them and, in many instances, actually, quote unquote, beat them in what they're doing. Talk to us about any plans that you have or any sort of empowerment opportunities that you may have for local entrepreneurs, for the local youth, or even informal traders in Soshanguve.
Sure, we could spend a lot of time on this. There's so many aspects of community engagement, and every time we build a mall, we get better at it and we do better. I actually believe there's a lot of synergy in working together with the community. So, for example, in Soshanguve, we've created at the busiest entrance, we've actually created a formal trading area for entrepreneurs to go and do their business there. Obviously, if those guys are successful, we would happily incorporate them into the mall. So that's just one aspect. The other thing is with the informal traders, we've actually worked at Thami Ngubeni very carefully with the informal traders and created even better trading spaces for them around the periphery of the mall. So we actually believe that both of us can survive together happily. And
please go ahead, sir.
No, I think I was finished.
Oh, all right. Awesome. I wanted just to touch on this as we conclude this afternoon, the number of permanent jobs that this opening has created. If you could just talk us through that.
Yeah. Well, obviously, these are jobs that are created in the retailers themselves. There's a lot of job creation through people like ShopRite and Spar going out and sourcing people to staff their stores. And we really emphasize to all of the tenants to focus on local employment. I think that's absolutely important for the long-term future of a shopping center and the tenant, is to really build bridges towards that community and hire from the local community. It also keeps the money and the employment in that community. And I think everyone benefits from that.
Andre.
Yeah,
Andre van Billo, wishing you all of the best with the Soshanguve Mall and all the other projects that you continue to do in various communities around the country. And as you say, just the importance of making sure that the local communities are part of that development and that no one is left behind. And beyond the permanent jobs that are created, that there's also an upliftment for the local businesses, entrepreneurs, youth, women. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon on Africa in Business. And good timing, because it's just Christmas. Are you going to be doing any Black Friday specials?
Yes, we are. So I think all of the tenants are busy participating in that. And I think it'll be a very good trading day tomorrow.
Well,
So I
good
hope everyone
timing.
enjoys it. Thank you very much for having me.
All the best. Thank you so much. That's Andre van Billo, is Managing Director of Cubisol, a company that owns several malls in and around South Africa's townships. And the latest venture is the Soshanguve Mall, which was opened on the 21st of November, just not too long ago. And as you can hear, they're getting ready for all the Black Friday specials. Perfect timing there. It's exactly 4:49.
Africa means business. Tune into Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni for the future of the African economy. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And coming up in about 10 minutes or so is Vous d'Afrique, as we hand over to the French desk. We say bonjour to you, Joël.
Bonjour à toi, Thami. Bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa. Sur Vous d'Afrique, tout à l'heure, on parlera du nom. On connaît désormais le nom du nouvel homme de Guinée-Bissau après le putsch de ce mercredi. C'est le général Hortan Tam. Nous en parlerons dans la grande édition, dans la grande actualité de Vue d'Afrique. Nous parlerons aussi de la nouvelle montée de tension entre les États-Unis et l'Afrique du Sud. Le président Donald Trump a annoncé son intention d'exclure l'Afrique du Sud au sommet prochain du G20 qui se tiendra aux États-Unis. C'est tout à l'heure sur Vue d'Afrique. Merci, Thami.
Merci beaucoup. That's Vous d'Afrique coming up as well in just a moment.
Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
As we conclude this afternoon, let's turn our sights on to Kenya, where the Institute for Maasai Education, Research and Conservation has filed a case against Marriott International. This is over its Ritz-Carlton luxury safari camp in Masai Mara National Game Reserve in Kenya. Leaders of the Maasai ethnic group have approached a local court demanding the demolition of the high-end structure. citing that $3,500 per night luxurious safari camp blocks a vital path of the famous Serengeti migration. Meanwhile, in a statement released earlier today, the Kenya Wildlife Services says Ritz-Carlton Safari Camp lies within a designated low-use tourism investment zone under the Masai Mara National Reserve Management Plan 2023 to 2032. For more on this, we joined on the line by Dr. Thami Ngubeni, the Director, Institute for Maasai Education, Research and Conservation. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us on Africa in Business.
Oh, thank you very much indeed for this time to talk to you.
So let's first get an understanding of whether, Doctor, the community was consulted in the planning of the Ritz-Carlton Safari Camp.
The community, as we've said in our arguments all through, were never consulted in this process, and we've denied that completely, and that's why we are in court.
Have you had any sort of discussions or negotiations with the Marriott International and Lazizi Mara Limited?
Well, we initially, before actually we went to court, we had tried to reach out to them, and we were not getting anywhere. But, again, we just felt like, we had to do something because, as members of this community, we're very concerned about the threats that continue to face our wildlife and our environment. So we never got anywhere with efforts to consult and to discuss.
There's the concern that you're citing now about the preservation of wildlife in Kenya. You also have mentioned cultural heritage or land rights of the Maasai community. Could you break that down for us into greater detail?
Yes, so but I think scientists will tell you, people who've done research in this part of the world, in Maasai land, people will tell you, or research will tell you that the Maasai people have been conserving nature, wildlife since time immemorial. We are the only community in the Eastern African region that lives side by side, coexist peacefully with wildlife. We don't kill wildlife for food. We don't kill wildlife for trophy. We recognize wildlife as part of a complete ecosystem or creation, and that's why we have a moral obligation. We have a moral stewardship towards nature and specifically wildlife. Now, then we have our connection to the land is unbreakable. We are tied to our land. We care about our land very much. We protect our land. We take care of our land. And in fact, during the height of poaching, which almost wiped out the elephant in this part of the world and other species like the rhino, there was never poaching in Maasai land because we are opposed to any kind of consumptive use of wildlife. So for us, attachment or relationship to the land and all the creatures, the creation in general, is a very important unbreakable bond we have. And so anytime we see activities that undermine that relationship, our relationship with the land, we become very concerned because we realize and we know for sure that our future, our present relies on a good, healthy, well-protected, well-cared for environment. So we are very sensitive to any activities that undermine the integrity of the environment and our land.
Right, Doctor. One of the things that you've pointed out as well is the threat to the ecological environment and atmosphere. Can you highlight for us some of the ecological risks that this project poses to the Masai Mara ecosystem, and especially in relation to wildlife migration routes and the water resources?
So, yes, wildlife, again, even with our consciousness, with our dedication to protection of nature, to protection of wildlife. Wildlife in Masai Mara, in this whole region, has facing very, very real and serious threats, not just inside the park, but also outside the park, where, the whole concept of capitalism has taken root, and now we see land being subdivided and fences being erected along corridors, wildlife migratory corridors, and this is a big problem we have right now. And I'm talking now about in the dispersal areas. And I'm very, very happy just to point out that there are many, many wonderful community-initiated efforts, as well as, with the support of non-governmental organizations and so forth, to open up, those closed corridors outside the protected areas of the game reserves, as well as giving up our grazing land for conservation. That's why you hear about conservancies, a lot of conservancies which are community grazing lands being donated or being given specifically for conservation. Now, inside the reserve, the problem we have is overcrowding. We have more than 300 and something camps in the Mara. And, Mara, you've not been to this part of the world, but the Mara is quite an open, space with very, very few forests and trees. And so most of the trees you find are actually along the riverbanks. And so all the camps, all the 300 plus camps in the Masai Mara Game Reserve are actually located along the riverbanks. And these are the same riverbanks that the wild beasts have to cross, both inside the park and as they cross from the Serengeti into the Masai Mara Game Reserve. So so there is a problem. We have this problem of camps locating in critical crossing points, and that is one of the major problems we have right now. That's a problem we are facing, and that's why in this particular case we decided to go to court to see if we can find a solution to this problem.
And we certainly will be keeping abreast, Doctor, as to the outcome of that court case. We thank you very much for updating us on that this afternoon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so very much for having me.
It's been a pleasure. That's Dr. Maitame Ole Dapashi, is the Director, Institute for the Maasai Education, Research and Conservation, MERG. Now, we also did reach out to Marriott International for their right of reply and for a comment, and they indicated that they do not have a spokesperson available to take the interview. However, they did provide us with a statement on the matter, and let me read a little bit from that statement. They say, as we expand our portfolio to lodges and camps, we are deeply conscious of the importance of environmental and conservation efforts in natural habitats like the Masai Mara. For the development of the Ritz-Carlton Masai Mara Safari Camp, we are working with Lasitsi Mara Limited, which is a Kenyan company, which is the owner and operator of the property. They have experience and knowledge of the area and have shared with us their commitment to sustainability and corporate responsibility. I'll take you now to the last paragraph where they say Lasitsi Mara Limited confirmed that they satisfy the requirements to open the camp. This includes obtaining the appropriate permits and the approvals from the relevant Kenyan authorities, including an environmental impact assessment that was conducted by a licensed expert in accordance with the Environmental Management and Coordination Act and the EIA regulations. In April of 2024, the National Environment Management Authority issued an EIA license. So that's the response coming through from the Ritz-Carlton, saying that they are in partnership with a local company and that all checks and balances have been put in place and that they are very cognizant of issues of biodiversity and, ensuring that the ecosystem is not impacted by their various developments. We'll keep you abreast of developments there. And that's how we as Africa in Business come to the end of our time together for today. Restez connectés as we hand you over now to Vue d'Afrique. Have a...
Vue d'Afrique. un magazine des actualités en français sur Channel Africa. Rendez-vous du lundi au vendredi avec Joël Mouteba sur Channel Africa de 15h à 16h, temps universel. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Bonjour à tous et excellentes conditions à l'écoute de Canal Afrique, la perspective africaine de l'information qui émet depuis nos studios d'Auckland Park de Johannesburg en Afrique du Sud. Je suis Joël Mouteba à la présentation et tout de suite, voici les principaux titres à la une de l'actualité sur Vue d'Afrique. On connaît désormais le nouvel homme fort de la Guinée-Bissau après le putsch de mercredi. Le général Hortan Tam, jusqu'ici chef d'état-major de l'armée de terre, a été investi ce jeudi pour diriger le pays